Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so we are continuing on with Shazam. I meant to record this a little while ago, but I ended up getting sidetracked. But we are edging ever closer. Yes, we are. And in fact, we are here now. But I'm really excited about this. Now, here's a funny thing. The wizard Shazam, the way he's being depicted here is kind of intriguing. And it's one of the things that I like about how Geoff Johns is doing this. When it came to the wizard Shazam, there was always something about him that just sort of seemed a little off. It wasn't that he was a good guy, but he wasn't really a bad guy. He was just kind of in between. And the way it goes down here is somewhat intriguing insofar as you end up having Billy Batson, who sort of hears this conversation going on, where you basically have this kind of arguing taking place between the wizard Shazam and his father, right? Like, there's kind of this great big huge argument that goes on, and then Billy Batson's father's taken out. And right off the bat, the indication seems to be that like the wizard Shazam is a bad guy. And it's kind of intriguing because Geoff Johns sort of messes with us and is just kind of like, this guy seems like kind of a good guy, because Billy Batson immediately starts to lose it. Billy's like, why would you do this? Ultimately, the response of the wizard is, this power was supposed to be shared with your family, but like, you are not ready to be a champion because you don't really understand what it means to be a champion. Kind of backstepping everything that he had said, right? Like, when I chose you, much like I chose Black Adam, I chose poorly. And it's just kind of like, right off the bat, it's like, he's just being a dick, and it's just kind of like, okay, so like, why is he against Billy Batson all of a sudden? So of course, Billy Batson ends up lashing out against the wizard, and that wakes up the rest of the Shazam family. They end up going to the window and finding Billy going head to head against the wizard himself. And it's one of these crazy things, right? Because what he ends up doing is really just sort of like separating Billy from his Shazam powers, right? That kind of seems to be the case, or at least that looks to be the case. It's like Billy seems to lose his abilities, even if only for a temporary amount of time. But it's interesting because he's like, ultimately, I chose Billy Batson, right? Where he tries to take that power away. Essentially, the wizard is fighting Shazam. He's not fighting Billy. And so he can't really take the powers away. He can take them away from Billy in his human form, but he cannot take them away from Shazam because Shazam is the power. It's like trying to take Shazam away from himself. It cannot be done. And this is a very important thing, because what this does, while it can be easy to sweep under the rug, what this does is it establishes this idea that when it comes to the power of Billy, when it comes to the power of Shazam, so long as Billy is in his Shazam form, his power cannot be taken away. He has to be back in his human form in order to lose those abilities. It's intriguing. It feels like a plot point that'll become important later on down the line. Now, of course, the rest of the Shazam family jumps in and they all immediately start going toe to toe with the wizard Shazam himself. And of course, he manages to overpower pretty much all of them. And that's where things get kind of interesting, because he's like, in order for me to succeed in my plan, in order for me to win, I need all the power restored to myself, right? I need all this power brought back to myself. You guys won't be able to use it effectively. You don't know what you're doing. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of a reasonable point to argue, because while the members of the Shazam family are capable, one of the other things to bear in mind is they are kids, and kids are curious. Kids have a tendency to leap before they look, right? Hence the reason why they ended up in this whole story arc of like the Magiclands and the Wildlands and all that kind of stuff. It was this obsession with whether or not they could. They never stopped to think whether they should. And that's what that turned out to be. It's kids being kids. And in reality, when it comes to this kind of power, when it comes to this kind of scenario, picking somebody to be a protector really requires them to be able to operate on a level higher than something like a child. Now, the reality is this kind of flies in the face of everything that we've seen with Shazam. Now, there's never really been an instance where Billy Batson has demonstrated ineptitude, the inability to carry out his powers or carry out his role in a way to where he can be a sufficient superhero for Earth. But at the same time, the way that Geoff Johns is painting this, we haven't really seen a conflict like this before, right? When you see Shazam using his powers and facing off against villains, sometimes it's a villain of the week, sometimes it's just Dr. Sivana, sometimes it's alongside the Justice League against some great big huge threat, Darkseid or like his daughter Grail or something like that. But it's never really seemed to be one of these things where it's like a wholly magical side of the conflict that is explicit to Shazam and requires kind of like a wholesale consolidation of power. We've never really seen that before. And it makes it intriguing, right? It makes it interesting, because what we end up doing is jumping over to Sivana himself. And one of the things that Mr. Mind basically tells him is, look, yes, for humanity out there, you guys see the eyes as windows to the soul. But because of the kind of power you possess, the reality is that your eye is a doorway to anywhere. And literally taking the dagger of Shazam, the nth metal dagger, and stabbing himself in the eye, what it does is it basically erodes the locks. It destroys the various securities that are there that were put in place to keep the various individuals housed within Monsterlands, to keep them at bay, to keep them locked up. Essentially, they've all been freed. And this is the concern that the Wizard Shazam was talking about, because keep in mind, all these monsters that are here are beings that are wildly powerful. powerful, right? They were so dangerous across the entirety of seemingly the multiverse that they were locked away. I use the term multiverse fast and loose because when it comes to the multiverse in DC Comics, there really is only one Rock of Eternity across the multiverse, and there may be different Shazams in different universes, but there's only really one Rock of Eternity. We know that from Grant Morrison's depiction of the multiverse itself. The result of this is that we're not really going to see like evil versions of Shazam who are like Superman, things like that. I think a lot of that's being reserved for the dark multiverse, right? Evil versions of Shazam, evil Superman, evil Wonder Woman, different things like that. Like we saw evil versions of Batman, which I'm wildly excited about. But these various monsters and beings are exceedingly capable. And this is the fear that the Wizard of Shazam had, that the monsters are going to be released. And in order to basically contain them and defeat them, that it's going to take a lot of power. Now, the funny thing about this is the way it's depicted here by Jeff Johns, it seems like they're more powerful than the 7 deadly sins. And if that's true, then we're talking about a huge amount of power, right? Because the 7 deadly sins are like a primordial evil. Their form and function is tied to the existence of sentient beings, right? When the first evil act was committed, the first instance of greed, the first instance of like rage or sloth or wrath or whatever you want to call it, whatever the case is, that's when those beings started coming into existence, right? So as long as sentient beings capable of emotions will exist, so will the 7 deadly sins. But these guys seem to be on a different level of power or a different kind of power that's able to instill fear. The only person that's not freed here is Superboy Prime. And that's kind of the funny thing, because he basically tells these guys, like, let me loose, like, free me, get me out of here. And they all just kind of ignore him and just sort of go forward with their, what it is that they're supposed to do, essentially meeting up, going to battle with Shazam or whatever the case is. But Shazam continuing his attack, going against the Wizard Shazam, suddenly everything basically stops. And the reason why is because Billy basically makes the case that we've been making this whole time. He essentially says, when I first popped up, yes, you didn't see me as worthy, but you had to look beyond the surface. You had to look deep inside what I was capable of and what I could do to figure out that I was worthy. And ultimately, you made the choice to say I was worthy of having this power. What's changed? If you're in a position now to where you're going to fight kids, then what makes you believe you're even worthy of this power? And that's when the wizard basically shifts and says, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm not trying to fight you. You're not my enemy here. My enemy is your father. And he immediately goes on the attack with Billy Batson's dad, right? And that's kind of the crazy thing, because then suddenly, like, Billy basically slows him down, right? Billy's able to kind of overcome the wizard and then ultimately sends him away. And that's where things get kind of wild, is because initially they're sort of like, okay, so like we have a reprieve, we can kind of rest now. And then suddenly Black Adam jumps into the fray, right? And Black Adam basically having been told by Mr. Mind, if you fight alongside me, then I'll ensure that your people of Kahndaq are going to be safe, that no ill will come of them. Because of the fact that Black Adam cares only about his people in Kahndaq, he basically goes to take out Billy Batson's father. And when that happens, ultimately, you end up having Billy Batson's dad, who basically kind of runs off this spell and then manages to overtake Black Adam. And when that happens, Black Adam is, of course, kind of torn between the realms and sent away. And then in response to that, Billy Batson starts looking at his dad funny, because where everybody starts looking at this and starts saying, yeah, Billy Batson's dad defeated Black Adam and everybody's celebrating, Billy's question is, how did you know that spell? And the response of his father is, well, it's just, it's because I have this voice in my head, right? The wisdom of Solomon. It basically taught me what this was. And Billy's like, but that's not how that works. The wisdom of Solomon isn't a voice in your head that tells you what to do in any given situation. It's a feeling. And that's sort of the way that it's been for a long, long time. How long it's been that way, I'm not entirely sure, because I'm not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to Shazam, but it's one of these things where it felt kind of like an intuition, almost kind of like a spider sense. And that's when Billy kind of starts putting 2 and 2 together and saying, if the wizard was after you, you're hearing a voice in your head, you're using spells you shouldn't know how to use, and you're saying you were able to use these spells because there was a voice in your head telling you how to use them, then you really are the enemy. You really are the bad guy. You wanted us all to fight. You wanted Black Adam to be involved. You wanted the wizard to be involved. You wanted all of us to fight each other. Why? Why did you want us distracted? Why did you want us removed from everything going on? And that's when he starts to realize what's going on. He says, this whole time, we thought Mr. Mind was inside of Dr. Sivana. That's not true. He's not inside Dr. Sivana. And that's when Billy Batson's father chimes in and says, that is correct. I've been communicating with Dr. Sivana, but your father is the one that's my host. I've been in your father the entire time. And I saw this and I was like, holy crap. Because that's why Jeff Johns stories are so cool, because like you think you know what's going on, right? Because if you guys recall, when it came to Mr. Mind talking to Dr. Sivana, we never saw Mr. Mind in the mind of Dr. Sivana. We just saw Mr. Mind inside somebody's head and talking to Sivana, and we just assumed that he was there because of the fact of the way the conversations were being done. It's cool to see that Jeff Johns still has it, man, because then Billy Batson immediately loses it, right? Immediately starts going off and then trying to take out his dad, but trying not to destroy his dad. And that's what makes him the perfect host, right? Mr. Mind knows that inside the mind of his father, there's really nothing Billy can do, right? The only way to basically take out Mr. Mind is to like use his energy on his father and possibly destroy his father in the process, which is something that Billy's not willing to do. And so as a result of that, what ends up happening is this portal opens up and suddenly all of these various forces from the Monsterlands come pouring out, right? So now you have all these enemies from the Monsterlands who were here, right? The Red Queen of the Wazunderlands, you've got Jeepers from the Darklands, you've got like all these evil beings who are here that are getting ready to wreak havoc all over the place. But in the midst of all that, while all of that is happening, we jump back to the Monsterlands. And the reason why is because one of the characters named Dummy was basically promised freedom. He was promised freedom from Mr. Mind if you were willing to help him. But somewhere along the line, that seems to have gone awry. He's been left behind. And so while he's searching around trying to locate everyone, suddenly here comes Superboy Prime. I was left behind too. I was betrayed just like you were. But if you let me out of this, if you destroy that little red sun over there that's dampening my powers, then we can basically get revenge, right? We can go and do our thing. We can do whatever it is that we have to do, but we can fight this fight. And the Dummy is taken in. He's like, okay. So he destroys this little red sun. He basically eliminates it. When that happens, Superboy Prime breaks out of his prison, destroys the Dummy, and then basically says, the first person I'm going to take out here is Shazam. So my question is, and this is what I want to see, I feel like Superboy Prime is going to show up on the scene and just immediately take out all the monsters who were there and then take out Shazam and the whole Shazam family. It's cool. But officially, ladies and gentlemen, Superboy Prime is free. It's gonna be awesome. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace. I want to say thank you to all of the new patrons who have joined patreon.com/comicsexplained. I want to give a shout out to Henry, Young Typhon, Elias G, David JS, Jacob H, Ben, John H, Jason C, Austin S, Austin H, James O, Chris T, Matt N, Jeff R, Joey M, Stephen Z, Sloth Like Lou, David C, John H, Lean and Mean. That guy asks questions all the time. Adam K, Genosis 916. I want to say thank you to all of you all. This list is growing all the time. Thank you for joining the Patreon.